Hi, my name is Neely Hallerman, and I'm here with my group today presenting Does Goal Setting and Performance Feedback Have a Positive Effect on Running Distances? I will be presenting the results section, and coming up next is Sam, who will introduce herself and what she's doing.
Hi, I'm Sam Mahoney, and I am going to talk about the literature review. So, goal setting started to be examined as early as the 1960s. Almost 60 years later, goal setting is still a topic of interest as it relates to how it affects actual performance. Researchers have examined goal setting and feedback within different populations, such as students, sports teams, professionals, and individuals who are just looking to lose weight or improve upon their health. These researchers have determined several elements that are thought to influence performance in goal setting. So one of these elements is positive or negative feedback. So for example, stating great job or way to go versus that wasn't really good, try again. How complicated the goal is and the length of the actual goal are the next elements. So basically, does it matter how many steps a person has to complete in order to reach their goal? And an example of length would be, am I eating healthy for 2 months or am I eating healthy for 2 years? Goal evaluation and overall accountability are the final elements. So does it matter if a person isn't reminded of their goal? And does it matter if their progress isn't shared with other people? The hypothesis that is stated in most of the research that we looked at is that goal setting and some sort of feedback will increase performance. In a 2013 study, researchers chose students as participants to determine how negative or positive feedback would have an impact on the level of motivation an individual had to complete an actual task. So the researchers administered an exam and provided some students with negative feedback and others with positive feedback. After the study concluded, the researchers determined that there was not a significant difference in the performance of those who received positive feedback versus the negative feedback. The next study that we looked at individual rugby skills within a rugby team. So for 10 games, 5 players were evaluated on certain rugby skills, and then all of their games were videotaped. So prior to the next 10 games, the players were allowed to watch and evaluate their own performance, and then they set a goal for the next 10 games. So overall, this study determined that all 5 rugby participants increased their skills related to the goal setting and the evaluation intervention. A study conducted in 1996 examined the number of sit-ups that 56 female college students could complete. Researchers wanted to determine if no goals, very vague goals such as do your best, or short-term or long-term goals made a difference in their performance. Conclusions of this study determined that participants who chose a more difficult goal showed an increase in performance, and both long-term and short-term groups performed equally well, which suggests that specific goal setting can lead to increases in performance over generic feedback, such as I mentioned previously, just do your best. In a study conducted by Martin, McNally, and Tagger, the role of self-evaluation and how it impacts goal performance was examined with undergraduate business students. Researchers also examined the motivating role of self-knowledge and self-evaluation on the goal-setting process. Participants were subjected to different test conditions, such as self-evaluation versus external evaluation, when attempting to complete a task. The results showed that increased self-evaluation promotes the generation of the goal performance, and self-validation and the pursuit of self-knowledge help to motivate self-evaluation. The final research study, another research study that we looked at, had 3 female soccer players as participants, and the study sought to determine if public posting, goal setting, and feedback would make a difference in their overall performance of certain soccer skills. So a chart was posted in public that showed the progress of each player, and their progress was then reviewed with each participant. This study concluded that the intervention package did improve their performance during practice games, but the intervention failed to enhance their performance during regular season game. Despite the fact that it didn't enhance their performance during the regular season games, all parties supported the use of the intervention for the future. In a recent study by Wack, Crosland, and Miltenberger, goal setting and performance feedback were evaluated to determine if it would have an effect on running distance. So the participants included 5 women who had an interest in running and participating in the actual study. The study included long-term and short-term goals. If the runner was able to meet the short-term weekly running goal, the goal could be set higher for the next week. If they did not meet their goal, the participant could choose to either maintain the goal or to even lower it for the next time. The results of this study show that all runners did increase their weekly and daily running totals by the end of the 11 to 6 week study, although there was, of course, variation in the different runners' success. As a group, we chose this study. We attempted to replicate the findings of Wack, Crosland, and Miltenberger, as it examined the effects of goal setting and performance of feedback on our individual running performance. Our study did differ from the original study, as we are all non-runners before the study, and we only had 5 weeks to increase our overall running distance. And that concludes my section.
Hi, I'm Jess, and I will be discussing the methods of the study. So this qualitative study was designed to assess the effects of goal setting and individual feedback on running performance. Just as Sam was discussing, in general, the studies that we read showed that the use of goal setting and feedback techniques did increase performance in different skill areas, ranging from health goals to academic goals to specific sports performance. Further research in goal setting is required to determine the motivating factors around goal striving and goal commitment, as well as to examine the effect of external factors on motivation and goal performance. The participants of this study were the 5 female graduate students presenting the research from Ball State University. Each of us lives in a different location across the United States. 3 of the participants live in the central Midwest region, and the other 2 participants live in the Western Mountain region. Materials required for this study were any exercise attire necessary for the weather and activity level of each participant, a cell phone for the use of the application or pictures of treadmill data, a treadmill if that was the method that the subject used, and the Map My Run app. This study was designed to use goal setting and feedback to increase the distance in miles per running event, which is defined as a continuous run at a speed faster than a brisk walk while in an upright position. Each participant downloaded the Map My Run app to track running data as a group. Participants captured treadmill running data with their camera and manually entered it into the app, or if participants ran on the street, they utilized the GPS technology included in the app. Map My Run collects distance data, duration, calories, weekly averages, and then also relates your pace as to your average. Participants who used Map My Run consulted Google Maps to check the fidelity of the distance and GPS systems and found that the 2 GPS capabilities varied less than 0.1 miles per route. During baseline, participants found that using Map My Run on a treadmill interfered with the GPS capabilities, so data collected from the treadmill was manually entered into the app. Participants also had an electronic data sheet that was updated during our weekly sessions. This study was designed to take place across 5 weeks. Participants took baseline data for 1 week and logged 5 opportunities to establish stability of performance. From there, for the following weeks, the participants chose an initial goal and then were able to increase, if they met their goal, 2 of the 3 times per running event. And if a participant did not meet that criteria, their goal was maintained for the next week until they were able to meet that criteria. And that same criteria for increase or maintenance was applied to the entire study. Treatment phases involved using goal setting and data collection apps to increase running. And then we did our feedback during our group sessions. And that concludes my section.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and start presenting the results section of our study. Prior to doing that, I'm just going to quickly pull up our charts that we created, our graphs, and share those with the group. And so just starting here, you can see, actually, I'm going to step back. I'm going to scroll through them for you. That, I lost my chart. Hold up. Here we go. We're going to start with Brooke. And Brooke set her first goal at 0.3 miles per session. And after the first week, she did not meet her goal. Actually, before I even start with Brooke, I'm going to go ahead and explain that we all were non-runners prior to the study. So noting that all of our baselines you can see are going to start at 0. And again, Brooke set her first goal at 0.3 miles per session. After the first week, she did not meet her goal. So she maintained or kept her goal of 0.3 miles per session for the second week. And then once she met her goal, she was able to increase her to goal number 2. And Brooke set her second goal at 0.5 miles per session. And again, it took her 2 weeks to meet her goal. Brooke increased her overall running from 0.0 miles per session to 0.5 miles per session. And then moving down, we are going to discuss Sam's running performance. Again, Sam started at 0.0 miles per session, and actually we all did. We were all non-runners prior to the beginning of the study. Sam's first goal was 0.5 miles, and you can see that she was actually able to meet her goal the first week. She 2 of the 3 sessions she hit 0.5, and actually in her third session she went over that. The requirement of the study was that you were able to make 2 of your 3 running sessions that would qualify you to increase your goal for the next week and move on to the next goal. So moving forward, Sam did set her second goal at 0.75 miles per session, and it actually took her 2 weeks to achieve that goal. Finally, she set a goal for 1.0 miles per session, and she was actually not able to meet that goal in the trial. Although I would just like to note that Sam did increase her overall running throughout the study as she started at 0.0 miles. And there were occasions where she did hit the 1 mile marker. It just in goal 3, she was not able that week to meet her goal. And then next we will discuss Neely, which is actually me. My first goal was 0.5 miles. And as you can see in goal number 1 under my chart, that it took me 2 weeks to achieve that goal. Once I achieved that goal, I set my next goal for 1.0 miles per running session. And as you can see here in goal number 2, that was definitely made. All 3 of my running sessions in that week did achieve 1.0 miles. So finally, for goal number 3, I increased the goal to 1.25 miles. And again, I was able to increase that goal, and 3 of 3 sessions achieved it. And moving further down, I have Kelly. And Kelly started out with her first goal being at 0.5 miles per session in goal number 1. And she was able to achieve that goal. And in the second goal, she made a goal of 0.75 miles per session. It took her 2 weeks to achieve that goal. And last, she set a goal at 1.0 miles per session. And as you can see in goal number 3, she did 2 out of 3 sessions achieve 1.0 miles. And finally, Jessica, our last participant, her initial goal was 0.5 miles, and she actually well exceeded that. She did maintain that goal. It took her 2 weeks to achieve that goal as well. So, but she did get it. And in the final week of goal 1, she achieved 3 of 3 sessions at 0.5 miles. So that caused her to increase her running distance, or she chose to increase her goal to 0.75 miles per session. And she was able to achieve that right away. And her final week of the study, Jessica set her goal at 1.0 miles per session, and she immediately was able to make that goal. 2 of the 3 sessions, she did achieve 1.0 miles. However, it's just noted that on her last, she wasn't able to get out and run for the final session, but she did meet the goal of 1.0 miles. So really, ultimately, all participants increased their goals, all participants increased their miles run per session over the course of the study. Some participants took 2 weeks to achieve some of their goals, and some took just 1 week. Overall, participants were able to increase their running goals with the use of goal setting and the performance feedback program that was established prior to the start of the study. Additionally, in addition to their running achievement, we did ask each of the participants at the end of the study to participate in a social validity scale that we presented. These were the 4 questions that we asked. Did you enjoy participating in the goal setting and feedback study? Were you happy with the results that you achieved? Did you think the goal setting procedure was motivating? And last, do you plan to continue running now that the study is over? And for the first question about enjoying the study, 4 of 5 participants, there was a scale of 1 to 5, and 1 was being strongly disagree, and 5 was being strongly agree. 4 of the 5 participants agreed, which was number 4 on the scale, that they did enjoy participating in the study, and 1 participant said she was neutral to the study. So our mean score for question number 1 was 3.8. And then in question number 2, were you happy with your results that you achieved? Actually, all participants said they agreed. So we had a mean value of 4.0. And in the question number 3 about thinking whether or not the participant thought that goal setting procedure was motivating, again, similar to question number 1, 4 of the 5 participants agreed that the goal setting procedure was motivating, and then 1 was undecided or neutral. So we had a mean score of 3.8. And the last question about planning to continue running now that the study is over, 3 of the 5 agreed, and 2 of the 5 were undecided whether or not they would continue running now that the study was over. And that concludes our results section of the presentation.
I'm Brooke, and I'll be discussing some of the limitations that we ran into when we were replicating this study. To begin with, there was a great range in ages. In the original study that we replicated, the participants ranged from ages 18 to 28, and the participants in our replication study had a much greater range in age. In addition to this, we had some health and injury concerns that have the potential to play a factor in limiting the number of times a participant potentially could come out to do their running in a week, such as tendonitis in the knees or some asthma conditions. So various health conditions could definitely limit how well we replicated the study. In addition to health and injury related concerns, the participants lived in a variety of different areas in the world, as Jessica talked about. Because we all lived in different areas of the country, weather played a huge role in how much we could get out and do our weekly running distance. Some of us ran into snow conditions, some of us had blizzards, some of us had some rain. So that definitely limited how many times we could get out to run and inevitably how long we could run while we were out. In addition to this, the original study did have the option to let the participants meet in person to discuss their weekly goals, which potentially has the effect to be more successful in goal setting. But since we were all over the country, meeting in person wasn't an option for us. So that was definitely a limitation that we had when we were replicating the study. Another limitation that we ran into was that due to time constraints in the semester, our replication study was a lot shorter than the original study. With that being said, we only were able to set short-term goals. So whether or not only setting short-term goals versus setting both short-term and long-term goals may have the potential to play a factor on whether or not the goals were successful. And finally, the participants in our study had the option to either use a Map My Run application or use a treadmill. Whichever one they decided to use had to be the same method that we used throughout. However, the original study used a Nike Sport Kit method, which had additional perks that our replication study didn't have. such as seeing other participants' goals throughout the week, and being able to really keep up with other people's goals while you're also maintaining your own. So those were some of the limitations that we ran into when replicating this study.
Hi, I'm Kelly, and I will be summarizing everyone's information in our final conclusion. As previously stated, this study measured running distances of 5 Ball State students over a 5-week time period. The students had a variety of age differences and lived in different states. During each week, the participants collected data by using Map My Run or taking pictures of treadmill results. Each student compiled their data into a table created by one of the members of the group so that it could be viewed at each of our weekly sessions. We met weekly to discuss the successes and failures in meeting our goals set at the beginning of each week and offered each other feedback as well as setting new goals for the following week. In conclusion, the study determined that goal setting paired with positive feedback are an effective way to increase running distance in non-runners. According to the graphs discussed earlier, all 5 participants in this study started as non-runners and ended up increasing their distance over the course of 5 weeks. However, it is noted that not all students met their weekly goal for each week, and in that case, the student would work on that same goal for an additional week. There was no difference in success for the students who chose Map My Run, which requires participants to run a live route over the stationary treadmill. In summary, the study determined that goal setting combined with delayed feedback is an effective intervention. However, we decided as a group that further research should be conducted to see if this method works in different scenarios, such as not offering delayed reinforcement each week, whether or not results are still positive for established runners, the effects of long-term goal setting, such as over the course of a year versus the 5 weeks that we had to complete the study, the effects of having a support system where you meet face-to-face, or the rates of running with a group opposed to us being kind of spread out all over the country and just discussing this weekly. And finally, if this intervention is effective in other settings, such as when used in an academic setting versus a physical setting.
As we conclude our presentation, we just wanted to recognize the references and the authors of the other articles that we utilized in the research. So real quickly, I'm going to go ahead and scroll through our references to the other literature and to the original study.
All right. Neely, actually, since you are presenting your screen, I think you just.
Oh, sorry, I can pull it back up for you. Sorry.
I was going to ask you. I just have a couple of questions about your graphs. So.
Oh, sure. Let me pull that up for you.
Yeah, your graphs again, and then if we could all look at them, I have a couple of questions.
Right. I just have to reopen the graph because I think I closed it when I did that. So just bear with me for one quick second. And should we still be broadcasting as we go through the questions additionally?
It doesn't matter.
Okay, well, I'll just keep doing it then. I just wanted to make sure. So we don't need to bore other people, I guess.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and stop recording now?
Great, thank you. And then hopefully I can still share our screen. 1 second. So I'm stopping the broadcast.